In the vast expanse of the galaxy, there existed an organization known as the Galactic Command. It was an all-powerful force that ruled over countless planets and civilizations. The command was made up of the most intelligent and advanced beings from every corner of the galaxy. These beings had witnessed the rise and fall of countless species, civilizations that came and went like fleeting shadows. Yet, despite the vastness of the galaxy, one species had emerged that puzzled them: humans. The humans were unlike any other race the command had encountered. Their unpredictability and quick thinking were like no other species. They had an instinct for problem-solving that amazed and sometimes frightened those who interacted with them. It wasn't that they were the most powerful or technologically advanced. No, what made humans dangerous was their ability to adapt, to think outside the box, and to do so rapidly. Their minds worked differently from the others, and in the arena of intergalactic games, it became clear that the humans were an unforeseen force to reckon with. The annual game night had been a long-standing tradition within the Galactic Command. This competition wasn't just about skill, it was about showcasing intelligence, strategy, and quick reflexes. Every species participated, eager to prove their worth and outsmart their competitors. For centuries, it had been the same pattern. Different species took turns winning, but none ever dominated in the way the humans had. That all changed during the most recent game night. The command had watched carefully as humans, known for their competitive spirit, entered the games. From the very start, they stood out. They didn't rely on brute strength or advanced technology like many of the other species. Instead, they used their creativity and teamwork to outsmart the competition at every turn. The command's top strategists could hardly believe what they were witnessing. The humans were not only winning, they were making it look effortless. The games weren't just about skill anymore. They had become a test of adaptability, and the humans seemed to excel in this. Every time an alien species threw a new challenge their way, the humans found a way to win. They would think outside the box, come up with a strategy that no one saw coming, and execute it perfectly. Their ability to stay calm under pressure, to form instant strategies, and to adapt to every situation made them nearly unbeatable. For the first time in Galactic Command's history, a species had emerged that seemed to be better at the games than any other. And it wasn't because of their strength or technology. It was because they were unpredictable. It wasn't long before the other species began to feel the pressure. Aliens who had once prided themselves on their skill were now being beaten by humans whose style was more akin to cleverness than brute force. The command's advisors were growing increasingly concerned. At first, they thought it was a fluke, a one-time occurrence. But as the humans continued to dominate, they began to realize something more troubling. The humans weren't just good, they were changing the game. The other species didn't like this. They had been used to competing with one another for centuries, but now they had to contend with a species that was turning their strategies upside down. The tension in the air was palpable. The Galactic Command had always prided itself on maintaining control, on being the ultimate authority. But this new development was threatening that control. The humans had outsmarted them, and they weren't sure what to do about it. Behind closed doors, the command held urgent meetings. They were discussing what to do about the humans, but they couldn't come to a clear solution. The problem wasn't just that the humans were winning. It was how they were winning. Their ability to adapt so quickly and think in ways the other species couldn't even fathom made them seem like a threat. A dangerous, unpredictable force that had no place in the carefully structured world of the Galactic Command. The decision was made swiftly. The humans would be banned from the next game night. It was a drastic measure, but it was the only way to stop them from continuing to outshine the other species. The command believed that removing them from the competition would restore the balance. It was an unfortunate decision, but one they felt was necessary to maintain peace and order. The news of the ban spread quickly throughout the galaxy. Most species were relieved. They didn't have to worry about being outwitted by the humans anymore. The command had made the right call, or so they thought. But what they didn't anticipate was how the humans would react to being excluded from the games. They had underestimated the power of human resilience and creativity. Humans didn't take rejection lightly. When they were told they couldn't participate in the next game night, their reaction wasn't one of defeat. Instead, they saw it as an opportunity to prove that they didn't need the Galactic Command's games to show their worth. If they couldn't play by their rules, they would make their own. The humans had something that the Command hadn't counted on: determination. In the days that followed the announcement of the ban, whispers began to spread among the human population. People weren't angry. They were motivated. They began talking about ways to challenge the Command and the other species, to show that their intelligence and ingenuity were forces that couldn't be ignored. They started creating new games that would test not just physical strength but creativity, logic, and the ability to think on one's feet. These were the kinds of games that humans excelled at. These were games the Galactic Command couldn't stop. What the Command didn't realize was that by banning the humans from game night, they had ignited a spark. They had created a situation where humans would now do everything they could to prove their worth. They might not have been allowed to compete in the traditional games, but that didn't mean they wouldn't create their own competition. The Galactic Command thought they had removed a problem, but in reality, they had only made it worse. The humans were no longer just a species trying to fit in with the galactic hierarchy. They were a force that would stop at nothing to prove that their value went beyond the rules of Galactic Command. The story of the humans had only just begun, and the Command had no idea what they had just unleashed. For the humans, this wasn't just about winning games. It was about something much bigger. They were proving that no one, not even the Galactic Command, could control them. The universe was vast, and it had no idea just how much it was about to change. And it all started with one simple decision: banning humans from game night. As the days passed, the rest of the galaxy watched with bated breath. The humans were doing something unexpected. They were showing that no one, not even the most powerful organization in the galaxy, could stop them from achieving greatness. It was a message that would echo across the stars. Never underestimate the power of human creativity, determination, and adaptability. The Galactic Command had made their worst decision, and now they would have to face the consequences. The news of the humans' banishment from game night spread like wildfire across the galaxy. Different species had their own reactions. Some were relieved, others were angered, and some were simply confused. The Galactic Command, once seen as the ultimate authority, had made a decision that had the potential to disrupt the balance of power in ways no one expected. It seemed like a small issue at first, just one species banned from a game, but it quickly snowballed into something much larger. The first to react were the other species who had lost to the humans. They had been defeated one too many times, and in their eyes, the humans' victory had become a symbol of their own weakness. The Command's decision was like a gift to them. No longer would they have to face the unpredictable and clever humans in the games. No longer would they be outsmarted. But even as the other species celebrated, they didn't fully realize the consequences of the Command's decision. The humans, for their part, didn't take the news of the ban with the same sense of defeat. Instead, they took it as a challenge. While many were frustrated by the decision, they were not the type to back down from adversity. In fact, many of them found themselves motivated, even more determined than before. The decision to exclude them from game night had been made by the Galactic Command. But the humans had always relied on their ingenuity, their resourcefulness, and their drive to overcome obstacles. Now, with the Command's decision in place, they would show the galaxy that they didn't need to play by the Command's rules to succeed. In small communities and underground forums, the humans began to come together. There were no grand speeches or declarations of war, just quiet conversations about what they could do next. They started discussing new kinds of games that no one had ever seen before, games that would challenge the mind, test strategy, and push each participant to think beyond their limitations. What the Galactic Command didn't understand was that the humans didn't need the Command's games to prove their worth. They had their own ways of showcasing their abilities, and those ways didn't follow anyone's rules. Soon, the humans began to form alliances with other smaller species that had long been overlooked and underestimated by the Command. These species didn't have the technological advantage of others, and they weren't as powerful, but they had something that the Command could never have predicted: the desire to prove themselves. The humans saw this as an opportunity to show the galaxy that strength didn't come only from advanced technology or superior numbers. Strength could come from unity, from creativity, and from the will to never give up. Together, humans and their newfound allies began crafting games that were completely different from what the Galactic Command was used to. These games weren't about physical strength or mastering complicated technology. They were about outsmarting your opponent, thinking on your feet, and adapting quickly to changing circumstances. The humans and their allies knew that these were the kinds of challenges where they could excel. It was their specialty. As the days went by, the new games began to take shape. The humans worked together in teams, developing challenges that would test not only the mind, but also the ability to work as a unit. They created puzzles that required collaboration, games that pushed the participants to think creatively and outside the box. And most importantly, they'd made sure these games were unlike anything the Galactic Command had ever seen. They were unpredictable, challenging, and above all, fair. There would be no advanced technology to tip the scales, no unfair advantages. It would be a true test of intelligence, teamwork, and strategy. News of these new human design games spread throughout the galaxy, and the Galactic Command began to take notice. They had made their decision to ban humans, but now, it seemed, the humans were trying to turn the tables on them. The Command's leaders began to feel the pressure. They had thought that banning humans from game night would solve the problem, but now they realized they had made a mistake. The humans were proving that their intelligence wasn't something that could be easily silenced or suppressed. The Command's High Council met in secret to discuss the situation. Some of the leaders were skeptical. They didn't believe the humans' new games would be any different from the ones they had already won. They thought it was just a matter of time before the humans would fail. But others, more cautious, began to worry that the humans were doing something they couldn't control. If the humans succeeded in their new games, it could undermine the Command's authority. The Galactic Command had always seen itself as the supreme power, and anything that threatened that power was unacceptable. As the humans continued to prepare their games, the Galactic Command took action. They issued a statement, warning all species that the new games created by humans were unauthorized. They declared that no species, under any circumstances, was allowed to participate in these challenges. It was a move designed to crush the humans' growing momentum, to show that the Command still held the power. But the humans weren't discouraged. They didn't need permission from the Command to prove their worth. The more the Command tried to suppress them, the more the humans pushed forward, determined to show the galaxy that they couldn't be silenced. Behind the scenes, the humans worked tirelessly. They held secret competitions, refining their strategies, improving their games, and ensuring that when the time came, they would be ready to show the galaxy their true potential. They knew they couldn't win by playing the Command's game, but they didn't need to. They would create their own. As tensions grew, the other species began to take sides. Some supported the humans, while others sided with the Command, eager to maintain their place in the galactic hierarchy. But no one could deny the excitement building around the human design games. More and more species were becoming curious. They didn't know what to expect, but they couldn't help but wonder if the humans were onto something. Perhaps it was time for a change. The old ways of the Galactic Command were being challenged, and the galaxy was watching closely. In the end, the humans' response to the ban had done something the Galactic Command never expected. It had united species from all corners of the galaxy. The Command thought they could control the outcome of the games, but they had underestimated the one thing that made humans dangerous: their ability to inspire others to think differently. to challenge the status quo, and to rise above the limits placed on them. The Galactic Command might have banned the humans from game night, but they couldn't stop the spark that had been lit. The humans had shown the galaxy that they were more than just players in a game. They were capable of changing the rules themselves. And now, the galaxy would never be the same. As the days passed, the tension surrounding the humans' banishment from game night only seemed to grow. The Galactic Command thought they had handled the situation with a simple decision to exclude the humans, but the ripple effects were much more significant than they had anticipated. Species all over the galaxy began to whisper about the humans and their defiance. What had seemed like a simple ruling had now turned into a spark that threatened to ignite something far larger. No one could have predicted how the humans would respond. Behind closed doors, human leaders gathered in small, secret meetings. There was no grand speech, no dramatic announcement. Instead, the humans began to quietly discuss their next steps, focusing on one thing: proving their worth. The Galactic Command had made a mistake. They had underestimated the humans' ability to adapt, to think outside the box, and to rise above restrictions. Instead of retreating, they would turn the ban into an opportunity. The humans quickly realized that they didn't need to play in the Command's traditional games. If the Command wanted to block them from participating, they would simply create their own game, a game that could not be controlled or restricted by the Command. And so the first idea came to life. The humans would design a new kind of competition that no one had ever seen before. It wouldn't be about strength, speed, or advanced technology. No, it would be a game that tested the mind, the ability to think quickly, and the capacity to work as a team. It would be a true test of human creativity and ingenuity. As the idea began to form, the humans began to reach out to other species that were also dissatisfied with the Command's authority. Some of these species had long been ignored by the Galactic Command, their talents and abilities overlooked. Now, however, they saw an opportunity to join forces with the humans and make a statement. They, too, had been marginalized by the Command. They, too, wanted to prove that they could be more than what the Command saw them as. And so, alliances began to form. The humans quickly became the leaders of this new movement, organizing these smaller species and providing them with the tools and knowledge they needed to design the new games. The games would not just be human-made. They would be a collaboration of species, each contributing their unique talents. Some species were masters of logic and problem-solving. Others were skilled in deception or creativity. Together, they would create games that combined all these abilities, challenges that no species had faced before. These games would not be predictable. They would keep everyone on their toes, constantly adapting to new and unexpected twists. The first challenge was to create a game that could bring the entire galaxy together. The humans were not only designing the games for themselves, but for others as well. They wanted to show that these games were not just about outsmarting the Galactic Command. They were about testing the limits of what each species could achieve, proving that intelligence and creativity were just as valuable as strength or technology. If the Command wanted to exclude the humans would create a new kind of competition, one that no one could ignore. Word about these new games began to spread, and the galaxy became divided. Some species, including the ones that had aligned themselves with the humans, eagerly awaited the launch of these new challenges. They saw them as an opportunity to finally be taken seriously, to show the galaxy that they were more than just pawns in the Command system. Others, however, were more hesitant. They didn't know what to expect from these strange new games, and they feared what might happen if the humans succeeded. The Galactic Command, meanwhile, was growing more and more concerned. They had expected the humans to simply fade away after being banned. But instead, they were turning the situation into a full-blown challenge. The Command issued an official decree, warning all species that participation in these unauthorized games would be considered an act of rebellion. The Command's leaders believed they were quelling a potential uprising by putting their foot down, but they didn't fully understand what they were up against. The humans weren't just playing a game. They were making this statement. They were showing the galaxy that they couldn't be controlled, that they had something to offer beyond the command's restrictions. The humans weren't just fighting for victory. They were fighting for respect, for recognition of their worth. They wanted the galaxy to see them, not as an afterthought, but as a force to be reckoned with. As the day of the first challenge drew closer, excitement and anticipation built. Spectators from across the galaxy tuned in to watch the human-led games. They knew that something big was about to unfold. The games weren't just about winning. They were about changing the way the galaxy thought about intelligence, teamwork, and creativity. When the first game finally began, it took everyone by surprise. It wasn't a traditional contest of strength or technology. Instead, it was a complex puzzle, a maze of logic and strategy that required participants to think deeply, to collaborate, and to solve problems in real time. The challenge was unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. It was the first of many games, each one more creative and complex than the last. And slowly but surely, the humans began to show the galaxy exactly what they were capable of. The Galactic Command, at first, dismissed the games as a mere distraction. But as more and more species began to participate, they realized that this new form of competition was becoming something far bigger than they had ever imagined. The humans had shown the galaxy that the command didn't have the monopoly on intelligence or creativity. They had demonstrated that there were other ways to prove worth, ways that didn't involve the command's rigid rules. The humans weren't just breaking the rules, they were rewriting them. The first game was a success, and the humans were emboldened. But they knew this was only the beginning. They had proven that they could outsmart the command, but now they had to prove they could inspire the galaxy as a whole. They had to show that this new movement wasn't just about them. It was about all the species who had been overlooked, all the voices that had been silenced. The humans had started something, and now they had to finish it. The Galactic Command watched closely, their fears growing. The humans had proven their point. They were not a species to be dismissed. The command's decision to ban them had set off a chain of events they had never anticipated, and they were beginning to realize just how dangerous this could be. The humans had ignited a fire that could not easily be put out. In the end, the games were more than just a series of challenges. They were a turning point, a moment in galactic history that would be remembered forever. The humans had proven that no one, not even the Galactic Command, could stop them from achieving greatness. The rules had changed, and the galaxy was left to wonder what would happen next. As the second wave of the human design games unfolded, the galaxy began to realize the magnitude of what was happening. The games, once dismissed as nothing more than a rebellious attempt to defy the Galactic Command, had grown into something far more significant. They had become a symbol, a rallying point for those species who had long been overlooked and underestimated. And as the stakes grew higher, so did the tension. The Galactic Command, once so confident in its power and influence, was beginning to feel the weight of its mistake. They had thought that banning the humans would silence them, that it would stop the spread of their influence across the galaxy. Instead, the command had ignited a firestorm. The more they tried to suppress the humans, the more determined the human race became. They were no longer fighting for a place at the table. They were fighting for the right to define the terms of the game itself. Every challenge in the human design games became more complex, more innovative, and more engaging. The humans had mastered the art of strategic thinking, and they had brought their allies into the fold, weaving a network of species whose talents complemented one another. It wasn't just about winning anymore. It was about redefining what victory meant. Each game was a test of not only intelligence and creativity, but also the ability to collaborate across species lines. It was a grand experiment in unity, and the results were astonishing. The Galactic Command had tried to contain the games. They had issued multiple decrees, demanding that any species caught participating in the human-led competitions would face severe consequences. But as the games spread, the command found itself in a losing battle. Smaller species, who had long been pushed aside by the command's dominance, saw the games as an opportunity to make their mark. They joined in, not out of defiance but out of a desire to prove that they, too, could contribute something valuable to the galaxy. The first major shift occurred when an unlikely alliance was formed. A group of species that had never interacted before, whose cultures were vastly different, came together under the banner of the human-led games. There was the Drenari, a species known for their ability to think in abstract concepts and solve complex problems, and the Zarian, a species that thrived in situations that demanded rapid adaptation. They had never cooperated before, but the human games had inspired them to see beyond their differences. They formed teams, shared strategies, and participated in the games not as individuals but as a collective force. It was the first true display of interspecies collaboration on such a large scale, and it shocked the galaxy. The success of these alliances was undeniable. As the games progressed, the Galactic Command found itself on the defensive. The command had never fully understood the power of human resilience, and now, as human-designed challenges continued to take center stage, they realized they had made a grave miscalculation. The games weren't just a form of entertainment anymore. They were a battleground for respect, for recognition, and most importantly, for the future of galactic power. Meanwhile, the humans remained unfazed by the growing resistance. They had never been a species that backed down from a challenge, and they saw the current situation as just another opportunity to prove their worth. They continued to refine their games, pushing the boundaries of what was possible. Each new challenge tested different aspects of intelligence, creativity, and unity. It was no longer just about outwitting the Galactic Command. It was about showing the galaxy that the human spirit, driven by determination and a willingness to innovate, could never be contained. But as the games continued to gain popularity, the pressure on the Galactic Command grew. The more species that joined the human-led challenges, the more it became clear that the command had underestimated the situation. What had started as a small rebellion had now become a movement, one that threatened to rewrite the galaxy's power structure. The command's monopoly on control was slipping, and the rise of human ingenuity had thrown their carefully structured world into disarray. The High Council of the Galactic Command convened once again, this time with a sense of urgency. There was no question that the command could not allow the human-designed games to continue unchecked. The very fabric of their authority was at risk. If the games spread further, if more species participated, it could lead to an irreversible shift in power. The council debated fiercely, and it became clear that they had only one option left: to destroy the games once and for all. The decision to eliminate the games was a drastic one, but the command saw it as the only way to restore order. They would use their vast resources to shut down the games, to banish them from existence. It was a dangerous gamble, one that would require a show of force, but the command believed that if they could crush the games, they could reassert their dominance over the galaxy. But the humans, ever the resilient force, were already preparing for the command's counterattack. They knew that the Galactic Command wouldn't back down easily. If they wanted to ensure the future of their games, they had to be ready for anything. They had prepared for this moment, knowing that the command would never simply allow them to change the rules of the galaxy without resistance. The humans had learned the hard way that the command was not a force to be taken lightly. The final battle was about to begin. It wasn't a battle of armies or weapons, but a battle of ideas, of ideologies. On one side stood the Galactic Command, determined to maintain its grip on power and restore the old order. On the other side stood the humans and their allies, those who had embraced the idea that intelligence, creativity, and unity could be the driving forces of a new galactic order. It was a contest for the future, and the stakes were higher than anyone could have imagined. The humans had already prepared for the command's attack. They had spread the games far and wide, making it impossible for the command to stop them all at once. The games had already become a part of the galaxy's culture, embedded in the way species interacted and worked together. The command could destroy the games in a single blow, but they couldn't undo the change that had already taken place. The final showdown between the humans and the Galactic Command wasn't a war of weapons. It was a war of hearts and minds. The galaxy was watching, waiting to see which side would emerge victorious. Would the command be able to silence the humans once and for all? Or would the human-led games usher in a new era of galactic collaboration and innovation? As the games continued, the galaxy held its breath. The outcome would shape the future of the galaxy forever, and no one knew how it would end. But one thing was certain. The human spirit had already won. No matter what happened next, the galaxy would never be the same again. The command had made its decision to banish the humans, but in doing so, it had sparked something far bigger, a movement that no one, not even the most powerful organization in the galaxy, could stop. The final confrontation between the Galactic Command and the humans had arrived. The tension that had been building for months now reached a boiling point. The galaxy held its breath, watching as two forces, one steeped in tradition and control, the other driven by innovation and unity, prepared for a battle that would determine the future of galactic society. The humans had anticipated the command's actions. They knew the command wouldn't go down without a fight, but they had prepared for this moment. They had built a network of alliances, united under the banner of creativity, intelligence, and collaboration. It wasn't just about the games anymore. It was about proving that a new way of thinking, a new way of living, was not only possible but inevitable. The Galactic Command, on the other hand, was desperate. They had underestimated the humans from the start, thinking that banning them from game night would be enough to silence them. Now the command was on the defensive, knowing that the galaxy's perception of power was changing. What had once been a simple contest of games had turned into a full-scale revolution. The humans had sparked something greater than they could have ever imagined, and the command could no longer control it. A high council of the Galactic Command had gathered once again, this time in their most secure chambers. They were divided, some of them still unwilling to admit that their plan had failed. Others, however, were beginning to see the truth. The humans had won, not by playing the command's game, but by creating their own. And in doing so, they had shown the galaxy that power didn't come from control or domination. Power came from ideas, from collaboration, from unity. As the final round of the human-designed games was set to begin, the command issued an ultimatum. Any species that participated in the games would be considered enemies of the Galactic Command. The stakes couldn't have been higher. But instead of causing fear or hesitation, the command's declaration only fueled the fire. Species that had once been hesitant, unsure of where to stand, now rallied behind the humans. They had seen the command's true colors, and they were no longer willing to remain silent. The humans knew that this was the moment that would define their place in galactic history. They had come so far, and now they had to make sure that the games, and the ideals they represented, would survive. They weren't just fighting for victory in a single game. They were fighting for the future of the galaxy. They wanted a future where cooperation and innovation, not tyranny and control, were the guiding forces. The first move was made by the humans. They broadcasted a message across the galaxy, inviting all species, regardless of size or power, to participate in the final challenge. It wasn't just a game. It was a statement. The humans were asking the galaxy to come together, to embrace a new vision of what the future could be. They called it the Galactic Challenge, a test of everything the humans had fought for: unity, creativity, and the willingness to collaborate across boundaries. At first, there was silence. The galaxy was holding its breath, waiting for the command's response. But then something incredible happened. One by one, species from all corners of the galaxy began to signal their participation. The Zarian, the Drenari, the Kreth, species that had once been divided, ignored, or oppressed by the command, began to join forces with the humans. It was the beginning of something much larger than anyone had anticipated. The Galactic Command, watching in disbelief, tried to intervene. They threatened sanctions, they promised severe punishments, but the galaxy had already spoken. The people were no longer afraid. The humans had done what the command thought was impossible. They had united the galaxy in a common cause. The command could no longer control the narrative. The final challenge was unlike any the galaxy had ever seen. It wasn't just a test of individual skill or technology. It was a test of what the galaxy could achieve when it worked together. The games were designed to push the limits of creativity, strategy, and teamwork. Each team had to navigate complex puzzles, solve riddles that tested not only their intellect but their ability to cooperate, and overcome challenges that forced them to think in new ways. It was a celebration of what the galaxy could achieve when species stopped fighting each other and started working together. The Galactic Command, realizing they were losing their grip on power, made one final attempt to stop the games. They sent their most powerful enforcers to disrupt the final challenge, to sabotage the event before it could reach its conclusion. But even this, the command underestimated. The human-led alliance was ready. They had anticipated every move, every potential setback. The sabotage was foiled, not by force, but by the collective ingenuity of the teams. The command's attempts to interfere only served to strengthen the resolve of the participants. In the end, it wasn't just the humans who triumphed. It was the galaxy as a whole. The final challenge was completed, and the result was a victory not for one species, but for all of them. The Galactic Challenge had shown the galaxy what was possible when species worked together, when they put aside their differences and focused on a common goal. The Galactic Command, defeated, had no choice but to acknowledge the result. They could no longer hold onto their position of absolute authority. The games, and the ideals they represented, had changed everything. The command could try to restore order, but the galaxy had already been transformed. In the wake of the final challenge, the galaxy entered a new era. The humans, who had been banished from game night, had not only proven their worth, but had also changed the course of history. They had shown the galaxy that intelligence, creativity, and unity were the true sources of power. The Galactic Command's monopoly on control had crumbled, and a new chapter began. The galaxy was no longer defined by a single entity or force. It was a place where all species, regardless of their background or history, had a voice. The games, once a symbol of exclusion, had become a platform for collaboration and innovation. The humans, along with their allies, had proven that even in the face of adversity, the power of unity and creativity could overcome the greatest obstacles. The galaxy had changed forever, and it was clear that the humans had played a pivotal role in that transformation. They had proven that the future didn't belong to the powerful or the mighty. It belonged to those who dared to dream, to challenge the status quo, and to believe that a better future was possible. And as the last of the final challenge's participants celebrated their victory, they knew one thing for certain. This was just the beginning of a new, brighter future for the galaxy.